2, 3. Well, that didn't work as expected. I tried my best. I folded the paper airplane, thought it would soar, and it didn't. I can make excuses and talk about good intentions, but the result was it didn't fly.
We start preparing with outcomes. In our last section for concepts, we tackled 5 important themes that are a bit trickier when it comes to equity. We viewed the different angles of progress, earning, and truth, terms we think we understand, yet terms we tend to have valid disagreements about. We accepted the overlap between local governments and social aspects of our lives. We don't get to separate them in convenient ways. And finally, we talked about how personhood, that is, moral consideration, is given and taken. With 4 sections down, we look to prepare ourselves for what we need to do in order to take action. It's worth taking a step back first and talking about what is left with our series. As we get into the preparation section, we're reaching the precipice before the trust fall, before jumping into the deep end of the pool, whatever metaphor works for each of us. Our goal with the series has been to bring us from a point of genuine interest in promoting equity in our respective organizations and communities to starting to take action. And the guidebook, the videos cannot force anyone's hands. There are no puppet strings that will take control of anyone. A message will not automatically be sent to our supervisors that our job descriptions have now changed. The best we can do with the series is to get us on that edge. It is then to each of us to make the conscious, deliberate choice to take the dive. So let's get in the mindset of reaching that last penultimate step. When we talk about outcomes, it normally falls across a spectrum. The first part is input, what we place into a process, service, project, and so on. Money, labor, raw materials, even something like political capital is an input. We have outputs, what comes out of our processes, services, etc., etc. We hired a new person filling a specialist role, like an ADA coordinator or a DEI trainer. Maybe we revised a master plan, or we just filled the pothole. Then we have outcomes, which goes one more step into how people are actually affected. Maybe if we hired the specialist, it's a brand new service that a few residents are now utilizing. Or maybe it's to support an existing service that sees faster completion of requests or higher levels of satisfaction. For the master plan, the outcome may be a certain capital project just got bumped up to the top and is now funded and being implemented and will fix the problem sooner. Or maybe the opposite. Now the residents are going to have to grit and bear not having their intersection, sidewalk, park, sewer, whatever it is, not improved for the foreseeable future. For potholes, well, the outcome hopefully is a safer drive, fewer damages to cars, less swerving around it. Of the 3, outcomes tends to be the most difficult to measure, which is why there may be less data for it. We usually have some good knowledge of our inputs and outputs. Outcomes require us to reach out to our residents and businesses, the people we serve. And outcomes are equity. This is what we've been talking about this entire time. Different people, groups, neighborhoods have different needs to find success, whatever success may be for them. Our aim is to help them be successful through our public services. If the outcomes fall short, then we evaluate and adjust. A few examples to drive our point home. Say we have a diversity training of some kind, like implicit bias or historical redlining, whatever it may be. An input is the time we're giving employees to attend, maybe the money to hire the trainers. The output is people now have that training under their belt, maybe a certification or a thank you email. The outcome is if we can measure a change in employee attitudes through a survey, or maybe a new policy or operational change inspired by it. We can take it even further depending on the department if there's a change in customer engagement. How about recruitment? An input is to fund recruitment on more specifically diverse websites and platforms. An output is a more diverse pool of candidates. The outcome is if the actual workforce, the people hired, become more diverse. One more. If we want to have a specific, say, impoverished neighborhood improved, an input is some capital funding. An output are the new sidewalks, a fixed road, a better park, whatever we built. An outcome is if we go to the people who live, work, and play in the neighborhood and hear direct from them what those improvements helped or didn't help in their day-to-day lives. If we want employees who keep their biases in check, have a more diverse workforce, want to really improve people's lives in that neighborhood, we got to look at outcomes. If the outcomes fell short, then equity wasn't reached yet. Does that mean we just utterly failed and are terrible? No. It means we've given it our best initial attempt, we learn from it, we keep trying. Straightforward enough? I want to clarify though, as this may seem to contradict our earlier section on the self. In that section we talked about the journey, not the destination, of continuous learning, growth, improvement, and so on. That all still holds true for us. And for our work, we do need results. We may not get it the first time, and honestly likely won't, and we have to keep striving for real, tangible results in our services. Because that is what is being asked for us. That is what is being asked of us from the protests, the movements, the countless books, documentaries, speeches, podcasts, not to mention all the individuals calling for equity and belonging, inclusion and justice. They're hoping for a better life, and they'd like us to be a part of it. We measure our success by outcomes. And outcomes brings us to talking about fairness again, like we did with the theme of earning. A common critique of equity work is that it's not fair because if we had equal inputs and similar outputs, then it is not on us if people have different outcomes. It is in this way that suddenly it's women and people of color and the differently able, the old and the young, suddenly seem like the ones given an easy time. And it's those of us who, although statistically speaking have more wealth, better schools, less obstacles, more grace, we're the ones who are the real victims of an unfair system. It's an effective distraction. We know this because it's used a lot, and a distraction it is, because we know that looking for outcomes leads to our best work, equity or otherwise. Beyond equity, think from law enforcement to planning to capital projects. What consistently will give us the best results for our community if we focus first and foremost on inputs, outputs, or outcomes? When in doubt, we focus on outcomes. It's about taking control of the narrative. If we hold an internal survey and someone says they don't like the results of it, what's the outcome then? Are we going to dismiss the survey, throw it out, forget it ever existed because someone thought it made their department look less than favorably? We focus back to the outcome. We want to use surveys to learn about things in our organizations and our communities and then take action based on the information. Outcomes allow us to move forward. When people want to slow things to a crawl, to pause and wait for everyone to be on board, even those who've made it clear they have no interest. When more steps are just arbitrarily thrown in, we keep our eye on the prize. The slowing down, the people who'll never be in agreement, the extra steps, keep moving towards the outcomes we want. Most of all, it is keeping in clear view the people who we're serving. We focus on the people we want to serve, to not let a naysayer take up too much space by making it all about them and their hang-ups. Whatever policies or red tape or inner politics pops up, we strive to make those secondary considerations compared to the actual outcomes. For another example of what another community is doing, we turn to the city of Fort Collins. They held an equity audit. Two of the services they decided to start working on based on the results was housing and policing. They held comprehensive meetings with small group discussions, digital tools, and a question and answer session. Most importantly, they reached out to participants after the fact to make sure community needs were heard. This is a great example of putting in the extra work, the extra steps, to get us closer to outcomes, to not assume things are going well. For our optional exercise, we consider evaluation methods. How is our work, the services we each engage with, evaluated? How is it measured? Do any of those measurements include outcomes? Do any of the measurements include the people our work is meant to benefit? If not, it's one area for improvement. This time, rather than going advanced, we're going to step back. After all, outcomes is the advanced option. It is how we really move the needle. If we have insufficient resources, support, and/or data, we can start with inputs and outputs. Keep in mind that those who complained about outcomes will not be won over with inputs and outputs either. When we uncover unfair, unequal, inequitable inputs and outputs, we will still face resistance. We can start here if need be, and eventually work towards outcomes. Up next, we talk time.